The scream tore through the comms, jagged and raw, echoing like shattered glass across the cabin. Captain Jonathan Hale said, "Cut the channel. It's feeding back." But the static swallowed his voice. His gloved hands trembled as warning lights strobed crimson across the console. Marcus Lee shouted, "It's coming from the outer hull." His face, pale under his helmet, reflected ghost-like in the glass. Dr. Elena Vega whispered, "That wasn't just a scream. It was a message." The crew froze, oxygen monitors hissing softly, hearts pounding louder than alarms. Then silence, deeper than space itself, dropped like a shroud. Something had ended, or begun, and no one knew which. The silence was heavier than noise, pressing against their chests like a second atmosphere. Jonathan said, "Report," but his words cracked into static. Marcus stared at the comms panel, its green lights pulsing faintly. Elena whispered, "Someone cut us off." Her voice carried a tremor she never let anyone hear before. Outside, the void loomed vast and cold, a black canvas speckled with indifferent stars. Inside, their breaths sounded louder than heartbeats, trapped in a coffin of steel. Jonathan gritted his teeth, forcing control back into his voice. "We hold steady. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out." Yet even he felt it, the gnawing sense that something already had. Jonathan's breath echoed inside his helmet, sharp and shallow. He pressed a hand against his chest as if he could steady the panic clawing up his ribs. Marcus muttered, "It's not equipment failure. Something else is here." Elena kept her eyes locked on the viewport, her lips trembling. She said, "It felt alive, whatever that was." The hum of the ship deepened, a resonance like a growl beneath their feet. The instruments flickered and dimmed, each one surrendering to the silence. Jonathan clenched his jaw, every muscle taut. "We don't break," he said, but the doubt in his voice cracked wider than the void outside. Marcus slammed a fist against the console, frustration boiling through his calm facade. "Systems don't just scream, Jonathan," he shouted. Elena turned sharply, eyes blazing despite the fear swimming beneath. "You heard it too. That wasn't malfunction." Jonathan raised a hand, steady but desperate. "Enough. We stick together or we die." His words cracked like a whip, pulling silence back over the room. But his gaze betrayed unease, darting toward the sealed airlock at the rear. The hull groaned faintly, like metal under pressure. They weren't alone. Not anymore. Then, as if mocking their fear, the alarms cut entirely. Darkness wrapped the cabin like a predator, swallowing every trace of light. The crew froze, hearts hammering in unison. Jonathan whispered, "Stay calm. It's a systems reset." His voice betrayed him, thin and hollow. Marcus's breathing grew ragged, quick bursts against his visor. Elena leaned closer, her whisper slicing through silence. "What if it's not the ship?" The void outside pressed closer, stars cold and sharp. And for the first time, the three of them felt utterly exposed, like prey under watchful eyes. Jonathan floated weightless in the dim cabin, eyes fixed on a flickering photograph taped near his console. His dotard smile, frozen in sunlight, cut through the shadows of space. He whispered, "I promised I'd come back." Marcus drifted closer, his voice low. "We all made promises, Captain. Some we can't keep." The words stung, but Jonathan didn't respond. Elena turned her head, breaking the silence. "You think space cares about promises?" Her tone was bitter, but her eyes softened as she studied him. The cabin hummed faintly, steady for the first time in hours, yet the weight of his unspoken guilt hung heavier than gravity. Marcus forced a grin, his attempt to lighten the suffocating tension. "Remember training? They told us we'd never panic. Guess they forgot the screaming part." Jonathan glanced at him, lips curling, but no humor reached his eyes. "We're not trained for betrayal." Elena let out a sharp breath, crossing her arms. "Stop pretending. Fear's already in this room." For a moment, silence returned, only broken by the soft click of Marcus tapping his helmet nervously. Jonathan said, "We don't let fear decide. Not now." Yet even he felt the cracks widening, loyalty fraying in ways no manual had warned about. Jonathan's voice broke as he stared into the void beyond the viewport. I left her crying at the station. She begged me not to go. His hand tightened into a fist against the armrest. Elena looked away, her lips pressed tight as if she carried wounds of her own. Marcus muttered, "We all left someone behind." The silence turned suffocating, pressing words unsaid into their throats. Jonathan whispered, "I thought I was saving us. Maybe I was just running." The admission lingered, raw and unshielded, the cabin walls bearing witness to a man who reached for the stars, but feared what waited at home. A crackle of sound filled the cabin, sharp and sudden. Elena's head snapped toward the speaker as a recorded voice began to play. A child's voice, fragile and warm, filled the room. "Daddy, come home soon." Jonathan froze, every muscle rigid, his heart pounding louder than the hum of the ship. Marcus lowered his gaze, unwilling to intrude on grief that felt sacred. Elena whispered, "They tether us, even out here." Jonathan closed his eyes, each word from his daughter cutting deeper than silence. His guilt, his hope, his reason for every breath, it was all contained in that fragile voice. The agency's voice broke the moment, sterile and cold, slicing through the warmth of the child's message. "Crew of EOS 9, proceed with Protocol Delta. Emotional distraction compromises mission integrity." Jonathan's jaw tightened, rage burning behind his silence. Marcus muttered, "They don't even hear us as people." Elena's eyes narrowed, lips curling in disgust. "We're not their crew. We're their property." The command repeated, clipped and heartless. Jonathan whispered, "Not anymore." His words, quiet yet resolute, carried the weight of rebellion. For the first time, the crew felt their unity shift, not around orders, but defiance. The ship jolted with a violent shudder, lights sputtering as a deep groan rattled through the hull like something gnawing at steel. Marcus shouted, "Power cells are draining too fast." His hands flew across the console. Every key press met with resistance from flickering systems. Jonathan braced against his chair, voice hard and sharp. "Stabilize it before we lose oxygen." Elena leaned forward, her gaze locked on monitors spiking with unreadable data. "This isn't mechanical failure," she said, fear edged into her tone. "Something is feeding on us." Jonathan's throat tightened, denial caught in his chest. "Machines don't eat ships." Marcus whispered, "Maybe this one does." The vibration deepened, thrumming through their bones, a sound too alive for machinery. Marcus slammed his fist against the console, frustration cracking the calm he always wore like armor. "Systems don't just collapse on their own." Jonathan snapped back. "Then explain it." Sparks hissed from an overhead panel, showering light like fireflies in a storm. Elena steadied herself, her voice low yet unshaken. "It's not inside the ship, it's outside, pressing in." The three froze, dread sliding in with her words. The hum shifted into a metallic resonance that crawled through their lungs and vibrated against their ribs. Jonathan growled, "Seal every compartment." Marcus muttered, "That won't save us if the ship itself is bleeding." His words hung heavy, copper in the air, fear now thicker than oxygen. Elena turned sharply toward the man sitting near the rear, silent while chaos rose. "Adrian, you haven't said a word." The hidden threat finally looked up, his calm face unreadable, eyes too steady. Adrian Cole, 40-year-old male, pale skin, short dark hair, spoke with unnerving softness. "I am listening." Jonathan's voice cracked like a whip. "Then contribute, damn it." Adrian's gaze lingered on the viewport, his tone quiet, deliberate. "Maybe what we fear isn't breaking in. Maybe it's already here." The words hung, venom disguised as thought. Marcus shifted uneasily, suspicion sharpening his features. Elena's jaw set, eyes narrowing in distrust. Jonathan leaned closer, fire lacing his tone. "If you know something, say it now." Adrian only smiled faintly, the silence he left behind louder than alarms. The comms crackled alive, slicing the tension with a voice colder than steel. The agency spoke, sterile and sharp. Crew of EOS 9 follow Delta containment. Do not question the mission. Jonathan's fists curled until his knuckles whitened. Containment? You knew this was coming. Marcus whispered under his breath. They lied to us. Elena's voice rose, venomous. We're expendable. Adrian remained still, eyes glowing with reflected light, unreadable. The agency repeated, more clipped, more inhuman. Follow orders. Protocol saves lives. Jonathan spat into the comms, voice cracking with fury. We're not puppets. The line went dead, silence roaring in its place. That silence was worse than the voice. It was abandonment, betrayal carved into the void. The silence that followed was heavy, pressing on their lungs like a second gravity. Marcus broke it, whispering, If we can't trust Earth, who do we trust? Jonathan's reply came sharp, though his voice trembled. Each other, or none of us make it back. Elena's eyes darted toward Adrian, her voice cracking. What if one of us is the threat? The words fell like blades, cutting through fragile unity. All eyes turned to Adrian, who smiled faintly, his calmness more terrifying than accusation. Jonathan stood rigid, body trembling, sweat sliding under his collar. Marcus muttered, We are unraveling. The ship's hum deepened again, vibrating like a pulse beneath their feet, mocking their unraveling bonds. The void outside seemed to lean closer, listening. Jonathan slammed the hatch closed, the clang reverberating like a coffin ceiling, the echo vibrating through the crew's bones. Sweat slicked his brow as he braced against the wall. Marcus shouted, panic bleeding through his words, That vibration! It's tearing through the hull! Jonathan snapped back, voice ragged, Stay on task! Elena's eyes darted from panel to panel, her voice cutting sharp. No, he's right. The energy spikes aren't random, it's being triggered. She turned, gaze locking on Adrian, who sat calm amid chaos. Jonathan's chest tightened, fury rising as realization set in. His voice dropped low, dangerous. You knew. Adrian's faint smile wasn't denial. It was confession without a single word. Marcus's voice broke, trembling with raw betrayal. You've been hiding something all along. Adrian's gaze never wavered, calm and unblinking. Not hiding, protecting. Elena lunged forward, her fury barely contained, every line of her face carved in anger. Protecting who? Certainly not us. Jonathan's body coiled tight, fists clenched as though his rage alone might rip the truth out of Adrian. Talk now or I'll drag it from you. Adrian's words came slow, deliberate, like knives placed carefully on a table. The agency never told you the real mission. I was sent to ensure you didn't fail. The revelation shattered what little unity remained. Marcus whispered, voice breaking, We were never a crew. We were pawns. The words hung heavy, poisoning the air. Elena shook her head violently, her voice cracking into raw rage. We trusted you with our lives. Adrian's reply was calm, colder than the void outside. Trust is irrelevant, survival is not. Jonathan slammed a fist onto the console, sparks spitting from circuits as if the ship itself protested. Survival doesn't mean betrayal. Marcus backed away, his breath shallow, muttering like a man unraveling. We've been lied to since launch. The agency's commands replayed in their minds, every order now revealed as a chain. Adrian leaned back, hands folded, eyes gleaming with control. Jonathan's voice trembled with fury. You're killing this ship. Adrian's silence was confirmation wrapped in calm. The comms hissed alive, the agency's voice cutting in, sterile and merciless. Agent Cole, maintain protocol, eliminate interference if necessary. The words froze the cabin, turning blood cold. Jonathan's breath hitched, stomach twisting, bile burning his throat. Agent? Marcus's voice cracked into disbelief, each syllable like glass breaking. He's not one of us. Elena's hands trembled as she gripped a tool, her fury drowning her fear. Adrian rose with deliberate calm, his shadow stretching across the cabin wall. His voice was steady, detached. I didn't lie. I withheld. Jonathan's roar shook the silence. You withheld our lives. The fragile line between crew and enemy collapsed in a single heartbeat. Adrian's calm words cut deeper than any blade. This mission was never exploration. You were chosen to fail. The agency wanted to measure how far the human mind breaks before the void consumes it. Silence followed, thick and choking, the truth heavier than the ship itself. Jonathan's throat dried, fury burning hotter than oxygen. Marcus whispered, trembling, "We're experiments. Disposable." Elena's voice cracked with grief and rage combined. My family, my life was just a test? Adrian's eyes softened briefly, pity flickering through detachment. The universe doesn't care. Neither do they. Jonathan's breath came ragged, his anger crystallizing into resolve. Then we end this. Not on their terms, on ours. The ship shook violently, sparks raining as if the hull itself was tearing apart. Jonathan gripped the railing, his voice a roar against the chaos. "Adrian, shut it down." Adrian's calm veneer cracked, eyes narrowing with cold purpose. "It's beyond shutting down." The agency demanded it run until failure. Elena lunged toward the system's console, her voice breaking. "We'll all die before their experiment ends." Marcus shouted, "We override it." Jonathan's heart pounded as alarms wailed, the deck vibrating like a dying heartbeat. The cabin filled with screams of metal and men. Trust shattered into fragments as the ship itself became their executioner. Jonathan's breath came ragged, lungs burning as fire alarms blared. We cut the core manually. Marcus's fingers flew across failing screens. Manual override risks implosion. Elena snapped. "We're already imploding." Jonathan grabbed a toolkit, every motion desperate, determined. "If we die, it won't be as their lab rats." Adrian stepped closer, his calm voice laced with menace. "Do that, and you doom Earth to repeat this cycle. I was sent to stop your defiance." Jonathan's jaw locked, fury boiling. "Then try to stop me." For the first time, Adrian's calm mask cracked, rage flickering beneath. The line between survival and murder blurred. The cabin erupted in shouts, the crew tearing apart at the seams. Marcus's voice cracked. "This isn't survival, it's suicide." Elena's eyes blazed, voice slicing. "Better death on our terms than slavery." Jonathan wrestled with the core panel, hands shaking, heart hammering with resolve. Sparks bit his gloves, burning through fabric. Adrian lunged forward, grabbing his arms, snarling, "You'll damn Earth if you do this." Jonathan shoved him back, fury igniting. "Earth damned us first." Marcus recoiled, torn between fear and loyalty. Elena's voice cut through, trembling but resolute. "Finish it, Jonathan." The choice carved itself in his chest like a blade. The struggle turned violent. Adrian slammed Jonathan into the wall, helmet glass cracking on impact. Jonathan roared, pushing back, fists hammering. Marcus shouted, "Stop, you'll kill us all." But no one listened. Elena grabbed a loose rod, swinging with desperate fury, striking Adrian's shoulder. He staggered, eyes blazing with hatred. Jonathan tore free, blood trickling down his temple, voice rawed out. "This ends now." Adrian lunged again, but Jonathan struck him down with every ounce of rage, pinning him. Sparks lit the cockpit like lightning, shadows flickering across faces, twisted by fear and fury. Survival demanded sacrifice, and the choice came now. The alarms reached a fever pitch, the ship's core screaming like a dying beast. Jonathan, battered and bloodied, slammed the final override lever. Sparks exploded, light consuming the cabin in blinding fury. Adrian gasped, pinned beneath Jonathan's weight, his voice a hiss. "You've doomed us all." Jonathan leaned close, whispering, "No, we freed ourselves." Marcus shielded his eyes, screaming as panels burst. Elena's voice rose above the chaos, not in fear but defiance. "If we burn, they burn with us." The ship convulsed, walls trembling as if space itself resisted. In that final instant, survival and destruction became the same. Silence swallowed the cabin after the core override, broken only by the faint hiss of dying systems. Jonathan staggered to his feet, blood drying along his temple, breath ragged. Marcus sat slumped at his console, eyes wide and hollow, whispering, "It's over." Elena leaned against a wall, her voice trembling with exhaustion. "Over doesn't mean we survive." Sparks glowed faintly in corners, fading like embers of a burned-out fire. Jonathan looked down at Adrian's unconscious body, sprawled across the deck, a reminder that betrayal had cost them more than systems. His heart pounded, heavy with guilt, yet defiance still burned beneath the ash of chaos. The ship groaned as if in mourning, metal straining against the vacuum. Jonathan pressed a trembling hand to the viewport, eyes fixed on the endless dark. He whispered, "We bought time, nothing more." Marcus turned, his voice cracked. "The systems are fried. Even if we stabilize power, we won't make it home." Elena's face hardened, tears streaking as she shook her head. "Then we leave a message. They want to erase us." Jonathan clenched his jaw, pain twisting in his chest. "If we die here, Earth will hear us. Every lie they fed us, every sacrifice, it will burn them." The silence that followed was not despair, it was resolve. Jonathan collapsed into the captain's chair, his body heavy with exhaustion. Marcus tapped at dead screens, frustration in every keystroke. "Nothing. It's all gone." Elena crouched near Adrian's still form, her voice sharp. "He should have died for what he did." Jonathan's eyes flickered toward her, pain and anger tangled. "Killing him doesn't undo what's been done." Adrian stirred faintly, groaning, but Jonathan's glare froze him into silence. Marcus whispered, "So we drift until we starve." Jonathan's lips pressed into a thin line. "No, we drift until they hear us. If we can't survive, we'll damn them with truth before the void takes us." The silence deepened, broken by the crackle of a half-dead comm system. Jonathan's heart leapt, hands shaking as he forced the unit alive. Static filled the cabin, then fragments of Earth's cold voice. "Mission compromised. Contain." Elena snarled, striking the console with her fist. "They still don't care. They're writing us off as failures." Marcus's laugh was hollow, bitter. "Failures? We just ripped their experiment apart." Jonathan leaned close to the comm, voice steady despite the weight pressing down. "This is EOS 9. We survived your lies. And if this is our end, then know this. We end as more than pawns." The comm hissed, then silence returned. The cabin dimmed further, systems dying one by one like fading stars. Jonathan closed his eyes, feeling the weight of every choice. Elena leaned close, her voice barely a whisper. "If this is it, at least it's ours." Marcus exhaled slowly, his hands falling limp, despair and pride mixing in his hollow eyes. Jonathan opened his eyes again, fierce resolve flickering. "We're not finished, not until the void takes the last breath from us." The ship creaked, trembling under invisible weight, yet for a moment, the three of them sat united, scarred, betrayed, but defiant to the very end. The agency's voice returned, calm and sterile, like a scalpel cutting through silence. "EOS 9, your transmission is terminated. The mission is concluded." Jonathan's fist clenched, nails digging into his palm. Elena glared at the comm panel, her voice sharp with venom. "They're erasing us." Marcus laughed bitterly, the sound hollow. "We're ghosts before we're even dead." Jonathan leaned closer to the speaker, his words heavy with fire. "You may silence us, but you can't erase what we've done. We'll echo through this void longer than your lies." The comm fizzled out, leaving only static. The silence felt like Earth itself turning its back. Jonathan turned from the dead comm, his chest heaving. "They'll bury this mission. They'll bury us." Elena's eyes glistened with grief, but her voice was steel. "Not if we carve our names into the stars." Marcus straightened slowly, fire flickering where despair once sat. Then we record everything. The truth, the betrayal, the screams. Jonathan nodded, resolve building from ruin. If our bodies are forgotten, our words won't be. The crew gathered around the last functioning recorder, their breaths heavy, their faces scarred but defiant. The hum of dying systems surrounded them, but for the first time they spoke as one. The recorder's light blinked, awaiting words. Jonathan's voice carried first, low but unyielding. "This is Captain Jonathan Hale of EOS 9. We were betrayed by the agency. We were sent to fail." Elena leaned close, her voice trembling yet fierce. "We were promised the stars. Instead, they fed us to the void." Marcus's tone was sharp, bitter. "We are not expendable. We are not pawns." Jonathan's final words cut deep, spoken like a vow. "If this message survives, let it stand as proof. Humanity's soul cannot be contained by lies." The recorder hummed, sealing their defiance in the silence of eternity. The recorder clicked off, its light fading to dark. Silence draped over them, thick as burial cloth. Elena whispered, "Do you think anyone will hear it?" Jonathan's eyes fixed on the stars, voice steady. "Someone will. The void carries truth farther than lies ever could." Marcus leaned back, head against chair, whispering like a prayer. "Then let it drift." Outside, the black stretched eternal stars, indifferent, yet endless. Inside, the crew sat scarred, broken, yet united by defiance. The ship groaned once more, then quieted, like a heartbeat surrendering. The silence was not emptiness, it was eternal witness. The final seconds stretched infinite. Jonathan whispered, "If anyone hears us, remember, we were human." Elena closed her eyes, a single tear slipping free, her lips forming silent prayer. Marcus's chest rose and fell, his breath the only sound in the void. The ship's power dimmed to nothing, leaving them suspended in weightless silence. Outside, the stars burned cold and eternal, indifferent to their fate. The recorder blinked once, sending its message into infinity. The last human voices aboard EOS 9 dissolved into quiet. And in that quiet, a story of defiance, betrayal, and truth drifted endlessly, an echo written in the stars.